Making my way through the halls of the palace after freshening up and changing into a new dress, Zakai's words replay in the back of my mind. He was right, the best way to be over all this was to talk with Devlin and hear whatever excuse he had to make. Things had been going great between us for the past 2 years, and we had managed to build bonds with each other, and I didn't want that to end. I walked towards the library, greeting the servants cordially and the guards stationed at their respective posts in the palace halls. I wasn't sure if Devlin was in the library or not, but I had asked Minerva where she thought her husband to be, and she had suggested checking the library since he was always here by this time of the day. There was a part of the library that was used to store old records of kingdom affairs, and I thought this was a way of checking if there was any clue about our parents or that could point out how they were before they died. While making my way in, I asked Kiva to get a glass of freshly squeezed juice and some snacks. I entered the library and closed the door behind me. The stale scent of books hit my nostrils, and I remembered my time here. This was the place where I had spent so many careless afternoons, sitting by the open window and reading along with Gala, who would sit right next to me, as I read out loud for her to hear. It had been like a source of comfort and escape for me. I remembered getting lost in the book, thinking of what it would feel like to have the freedom to live my life like I wanted. So much really has changed. I had gotten the freedom I wanted, but Gala isn't here anymore to share it with me. Still, her memory and the time we spent together live on forever in my heart. Snapping out of my thought, I began my search. I pulled every book off the shelf and flipped through it, trying to find anything that may provide me with information about them or a description of how they looked. Time passed incrementally. I had no idea how long it had been, whether it had been minutes or hours, but when I saw the stack of books I had removed, I realized it had to have been at least an hour. Suddenly, I heard someone opening the door. I thought instantly that it was Kiva, who had forgotten all about the refreshment she was supposed to bring to me. Not that I mind, I wasn't in the mood right now. It would only slow me down, and I still had half of the library to go through. When the door opened, I watched as Devlin made his way into the library, just for his step to flatter a bit, startled to see me here. But it was soon wiped off and replaced by a smile. "I see old habits die hard," he mused, making his way towards me. "I remember the times you would sneak in here with Gala, despite Afra's attempts to keep you locked in your room." With the number of servants she had watching my every move, I'm surprised she never cut on with me sneaking out, I muttered dryly, and Devlin's lips rose up in a smile. My eyes stayed on his face, studying him. The smile on his lips said more than just him agreeing with me. It was almost like he knew why, and I didn't have to ponder more about it. "I'm guessing you had a hand in it," I said, and he looked at me a bit shocked for a second before shrugging his shoulders. I knew how much this helped with the loneliness. "You always looked happy being here, and I wanted to give that to you, even if it was for a short while. That was the least I could do." "Thank you, Devlin," I replied sweetly, glancing to the side and noticing 2 of the books I adored when I was a child. Devlin gave a small smile before his face turned serious. "Letitia," he said slowly, cautiously selecting his words as he approached me. "You have every right to be mad at me for keeping you in the dark and letting you have to go through all this alone." He could not finish that sentence. His eyes darted around the library room, his jaw was clenched, and his hands were folded together in a tight fist. "When you needed me the most," he continued, "there is nothing I can say that would make up for that. You have no idea how much I regretted not doing anything then. I was 7 when it all happened. Not only had I witnessed Leandro's murder our father, but I had to watch him marry our mother months later. I had no one to turn to, our mother was in grief, some of the palace maids were already working for Leandro's, and I was constantly being watched. After mother and grandfather passed, I knew there was no way Leandro's or Afra would ever keep us alive, not when they thought of us as a nuisance and me as a hurdle to the throne. I had to do what I thought was right at the time, pretending to have lost the memory of my past years due to trauma of their death. I had to swallow down the fear, pain, and anger as I addressed Leandro's and Afra as our parents. It was the only way to keep us safe." I listened to his words incredulously, not believing he had to go through all that at such a young age. Still, I allowed him to continue, not wanting to interrupt him as he put more truth into the past. It hadn't been easy fooling them. Leandros and Afra had tried in every turn to test me to see if truly I had lost my memories or not. They had both been skeptical about it, but with Afra not being able to bear any more children and her hating the idea of any of Leandra's mistresses birthing him one, she had decided to claim me as hers, with the idea of molding me into the perfect king she wanted. And that was how everything came to be. I made sure that you were always in my line of sight, putting you either close to me or Katrona, who had been a couple of months older than you. He says, I will forever blame myself for not keeping you safe like I should have. I should have protected you more instead of focusing on the plan to get rid of them for good. I thought your being alive was more than enough, ignorant of the fact that you were miserable being here. I realized that too late. Marrying you off to the king of the Nisha had been the only way to set you free. The Nisha may be known for their ferociousness and brutality in war, but they are also known to have much respect for their women. I can only hope that you will be happy there. He inhaled deeply. Obviously, this confession took a toll on him. I suddenly felt overwhelmed by this unexpected clarification, knowing everything he had to sacrifice. He must have felt lonely, bearing all this burden all by himself. I walked over to him and wrapped my arms around his neck. Devlin didn't hesitate as he hugged me back, and we remained like that for a long time, with neither of us willing to let go. Finally, when we did, I felt as if a huge burden had just been lifted off of my heart and soul, and I knew it was the same for him. His gaze moved to the pile of books on the table. Afra had tried to have everything that belonged to our parents burned, but I was able to salvage a portrait of them, which had been drawn on the day of their wedding. I had stocked them in the safest place I knew. He walks further into the library, moving to the shelves that were attached to a wall, or so I thought, because Devlin gave it a push, moving it out of the way and to the side, showing a small door I hadn't known had been there before. No one knows about this except for our mother, Princess Alina, and me. Devlin says, opening the door. There was a sad smile on his face, and I could tell he was remembering a memory of them together. This used to be our hiding place. We would come here all the time, away from palace stress, just the two of us, spending quality time together. He nudged his head, telling me it was okay to walk in. I took a slow step towards the door, my heart beating wildly in anticipation of what I would find. Even now, from this perspective, when I entered the door, it seemed as if it was an almost sacred place. The light shone in thin strips of yellow through the windows, making it look more glorious. I enjoyed the silence of the place as I took in the appearance of the room, which was small but cozy, with just enough space for a single couch and a modest desk. There wasn't a spark of dust in sight, which shows that it was well taken care of. The desk was tidy, with a few books and papers neatly stacked on one corner. The room had a sense of calm and order, as if it were a refuge from the chaos of the world outside. I dared not touch anything at first, as if I might disturb its sanctity. My eyes stopped at a scroll in the center of the table. I stared at it for a while. Eventually, curiosity won over. My footsteps fluttered towards it with trembling legs, and my lips were dry. Picking up the scroll, I slowly undid the rope, unwrapping the portrait. My breath heaves and my hands tremble when I open it fully. Staring back at me was a woman who looked exactly like me. White wavy hair fell below her shoulder blade, and her blue eyes sparkled with love and warmth. She has a grace to her, looking like something made out of a fairy tale. She truly was beautiful, and the smile on her lips helped make her look even more radiant. My gaze turned towards the man beside her, his dark hair and features like Devlin, and blue eyes, which were the same as his wife. For someone who had been a commoner most of his life, he looked graceful and royal. His eyes, which were focused on his wife, held love and warmth in them. A sob left my lips as I took in the beautiful sight of our parents. I felt a hand wrapped around my shoulder, and my head rested on Devlin's chest as the tears pooled in my eyes. You are the perfect replica of our mother, he whispers softly in my ears. Having not just her beauty, but her heart, her kindness, her love, and the respect she had for everyone, regardless of their status. If she were alive, she would no doubt be proud of you, and the woman that you have become. They both will. I know I am. His arms wrapped around my shoulder in a tight hug, and I continued to bawl my eyes out. Our moment was cut short by the sound of the library door banging open, followed by heavy footsteps. I took a step back, wiping the tears from my eyes. Devlin's hand cupped my cheeks, giving them a small pat, his eyes checking to see if I was okay. I gave him a nod to let him know I was. He pecked my forehead, making his way out of the secret room and back to the library. I lifted the scroll up, taking one last look at our parents before rolling it back and placing it where it had been. I made my way out of the room to the library, following the sound of harsh whispers. Devlin and what seemed to be a palace guard were in deep conversation, with the former having a surprised and wary look on his face. He said something to the guard, who bowed, making his way out of the library. Devlin turned to look at me, taking in my confused state. "What seems to be the problem?" I asked, walking towards him. He signs, and his fingers run through his hair. Kaytrona and Afra were spotted making their way to the palace. "What?" "My thought exactly," he says. "They have been missing for months, and suddenly they just turn up out of the blue." He sighs again. "I will have the guards send them away." "No, I think it's best we find out what they want." Devlin looked at me worriedly, his gaze asking if that was a wise decision. They made an effort to come here after being missing for months. Clearly, they want something. We both made our way out of the library to the entrance of the palace. I spotted two women who were scruffy looking. Their clothes were tattered and dirty, their hair was unkempt and filthy, and their skin looked malnourished and stained, but the most prominent was the blood that covered most of their body. My brows furrowed wondering who they were, but the more I took a closer look at them, the more I could spot a resemblance, and a gasp of panic left my lips. "Kaytrona, Afra," I called out, my voice barely a whisper. Devlin, who was beside me, raced to where Kaytrona was, a look of dismay on his face as he took in her appearance. "Kaytrona," he calls out. Her hand raised, clenching his shirt. Her head fell back as her body went limp, with her falling into his hold. Afra, who was beside her, had tears streaming down her eyes. She looked nothing like the graceful woman I knew her to be, and I wondered what had happened to both of them. I didn't have time to ponder about it when a scream filled the palace floor as Afra stumbled back, losing consciousness. A guard was quick to catch her before she could hit the floor. Nisha Palace. The young palace maid trembled in fear, she could hear the shuddering of her heart. The memory of that day filled up every thought in her head, refusing to give way. Hunting her day and night. She had cursed herself for walk in that direction that very day. If only she hadn't forgotten her washcloth in the meeting room of the palace, she wouldn't have needed to go back for it. It's been months since the death of the queen's handmaid, yet no one seems to know who the culprit was. No one but her. She could feel the sweat break on her forehead. She was the only one who had seen the culprit flee the scene, the only one who knew who it was. She had kept it a secret for months now and couldn't bear it anymore. There was no way out of this. She needed to swallow her fear and tell the king what she knew. That was the only way to protect the queen and let go of the guilt that had been eating her up. Maids and guards started pouring into and out of Kaytrona's and Afra's chambers as the palace descended into a frenzy. I yelled orders with a worried heart. I couldn't wait for the healer to show up before I started treating Kaytrona. She had the appearance of being in much worse shape than Afra. "What time will the healer be arriving?" I asked, and as I paced around the room, my voice strained. Devlin was with the palace guards, trying to get control of everything, while Minerva was with some of the maids, taking care of Afra. "He should be here soon, Lady Letitia," Kiva replied, equally worried. I cast a quick glance at Kaytrona, whose color was quickly fading. She might have already passed away by the time the healer arrived, so there was no way I could wait. I forced the thought from my mind and looked to Kiva with a panicked expression. "Get me all of the herbs that are available in the palace, and any other necessary materials to make to help out with. Hurry!" I rushed back to her side, trying to keep the tears at bay at her disheveled state. "It's going to be okay. You are going to be okay, Kaytrona. I promise." When Kaytrona groans, I felt the pain tear through my stomach and caused my heart to split into pieces. I held back a sob as my lips shook. I knew a lot about herbs and had picked up some expertise from Luca. Not after having been poisoned once and having to care for Darium while he was unconscious. After some time, Kiva showed up with everything I had requested. I drove all of the servants away and then searched the herbs, recognizing a few. I started attempting to create a tonic that I hoped would be beneficial. I needed to help build up her strength. Her body was bloody, making it hard to pinpoint where exactly she was bleeding from. Combining the herbs with a few others, I started grinding them. I persevered, despite my hands shaking the entire time and my eyes welling up with tears. When the herbs had been thoroughly ground, I dumped them into a small basin and squeezed the miry liquid that had resulted from combining the herbs. I hurried back to Kaytrona's side while handling it gingerly and put the bowl on her lips. "You need to drink this. The healer is on his way. This will give you a bit of strength." I began softly, urging her to take it. She managed to take the bowl with a trembling hand, taking little sips. I touched her forehead and felt it was burning hot, but her body felt like it had been dipped in ice. "Where in the heavens is the healer, Kiva? I will go check to see if he has arrived." Kiva answered, rushing towards the door. "No. Have one of the maids do it while you get me a bowl of cold water and a towel," I ordered sternly, getting a nod from her as she immediately rushed out of the chambers, leaving us alone. I turned back to look at Kaytrona, whose eyes had become fuzzy from crying. Her face showed signs of fear. "Everything is going to be fine, it's going to be okay." While clutching her hands, I muttered. She drifted closer and gazed at me, her eyes filled with unsaid grief. "Keep your eyes open for me, Kaytrona. Don't close them. I need you to stay awake, please." I choked, my voice trembling. The tears slip out of her eyes just as Kiva arrives with the bowl of cold water and towel. I got to work right away, wiping the sweat from her body. My hands shook while I did this. For how long I continued this deed, I wasn't sure. It wasn't until the door opened with the healer rushed in, moving to where Kaytrona lay on the bed. Even though I knew Kaytrona was in agonizing pain, she had managed to stay awake. It didn't take long for her to lose consciousness the second the healer began treating her. Her body is too weak, her heart is faint. I'm afraid she has lost a lot of blood. I don't know if she would survive the night. "You can't just give up, you need to do something, anything would be great," Devlin yells from beside me. The healer and some maids who were assisting him all had an apprehensive look on their faces. The man gulped when he took in the angry look on Devlin's face. I look at Kaytrona's pristine, once bloody face and note the deep cuts that extended all the way down to her neck. She was completely destroyed. Unrecognizable. Although they did their best to clean her, she was still in a terrible, lifeless condition. My focus turned to the scorched scars and numerous deep wounds on both of her hands, which were sufficient to convince me that she had endured dreadful suffering. Her body is too weak for any treatment at this point. Her heartbeat keeps decreasing. Now the important thing is to stop the blood loss and regain her strength before we can proceed with other treatment. "Then what are you waiting for?" "I'm afraid, Your Majesty. The parsley flower, which should help with the blood loss, can be found in Bania, which is an hour away from here, by horse. I don't know if she can survive till then. I made a drink to help with her strength, I can make one again. Should it not be more than enough to keep her stable till the flower is brought?" I asked the healer expectantly. "We can try, but the princess has already lost consciousness. I'm afraid it won't be easy." "It's better than doing nothing," Devlin points out. "I will have someone go get the parsley flower." He says this, making his way out of the room. I turned to look at Kiva, giving her a nod, and we began making the same tonic we did with the herbs. The maids present helped clean off the sweat on her face, with them taking turns to make sure she was warm. Once the tonic was ready, we were having a hard time giving it to her since she wasn't conscious of taking it by herself. We tried using the spoon to feed it to her, but it seemed fruitless, which only resulted in one solution. I took an urge gulp of the drink, bringing my lips to her as I forced it down into her mouth. As much as it felt foreign to lock lips with another female or someone who wasn't Darium, this was the only way. It was not like I could let the maid or the healer do it themselves. Neither could Devlin, as it would be more weird than me doing it myself. Her heartbeat was faint, and I didn't know how much time she had. At this point, we needed a miracle. The door to Kaytrona's chamber pulls open, and Devlin walks in, his face contorted in confusion and immense anger. I get to my feet, handing Kiva the empty bowl, before waking towards him. She is still hanging on. I'm sure she will be better once the healer is able to secure the parsley flower. I hope so too, he says, disgruntled. What about Afra? She is unconscious now, but is out of harm's way. There are a few injuries in her body, but nothing life-threatening, so she should be fine. She just needs to rest for a couple of days or weeks. Good to see at least one of them doing okay. It would have been more chaotic had it been otherwise. Yeah, how convenient is that? Devlin voiced out, but his tone had a hint of suspicion. Why do you say it like that? I asked him, confused by what he was implying. I mean, here is Kaytrona fighting for her life, while Afra just seems to have a little but sufficient wound that is more than enough to keep her alive. My eyes widened at his words. Wait, you don't think she has a hand in what happened to Kaytrona? I gasped. I know Afra can be selfish and cold-venomous. But this isn't just anyone, this is her daughter. Someone who she cares deeply about. I won't put it past her, Letitia. Devlin said it with a scowl. We just have to wait and see if she truly is blameless or not. Our conversation was cut short when the door to the chamber opened and the healer walked in again with the flower in his hand. Save her, I say to him. I will try everything I can, Queen Sviatoslavic. He bows, heading towards Kaytrona's bed, and begins with her treatment. More than 8 to 9 hours passed while we waited outside the hallway of the chambers. There was still time before the daybreak. During the course of the wait, I had freshened up and attended to the twins before putting them to sleep, while Minerva watched over them. Devlin had asked Minerva to return to their chamber while the maids took care of Afra. He didn't want her stressing herself. She wasn't even allowed to come here, and as much as she tried to refute his order, he remained firm in it. To which I understand, she had only a few months and some weeks before the birthing of their child. With the pregnancy being a risky one, he didn't want her to see any gruesome sight. I don't know for how long we waited until the door of the chamber pulled open, with a maid letting us know that it was okay to enter. The moment we stepped in, my eyes instantly landed on Kaytrona. She was almost completely wrapped up in white pieces of small clothing. Even her face was wrapped in the white cloth, which also covered her entire arms and legs. Her right eye, nose, and corner of her mouth were all that could be seen. The gradual rising and falling of her chest was the only way I could tell she was still alive. The healer's face was unreadable, making it hard to know if everything went well or not. He sighs. We were able to get her stable and out of risk. Thanks to heaven, that is good news. I trailed off when I saw the look on his face. I could tell something was up, and he looked hesitant to say it. What seems to be the problem, then? Devlin asks, taking note of the look on the healer's face. His eyes darted around the room, unsure, and his fingers fudged with each other in a nervous act. I don't know how to say this, I can't be certain yet, but... He stops again, his gaze not being able to meet either Devlin's nor eyes. Can you get to what the problem is? You said she was out of danger, but what? We've managed to stop the bleeding and helped with the external wounds, which you can see is a lot. It's going to take some time before it heals, some weeks, others months. Since she is unconscious, she won't feel the pain, but I will have an herb sent to help with it when she wakes up. Is that all? I ask, feeling my heartbeat escalate. There was some injury in the head as well. My guess is that she was hit hard on her head. It's a surprise she hadn't lost consciousness till now. The healer continues, but I knew for a fact that there was more to the story. I can't deduce her head injury and the impact it might have till she wakes up. I feel you are beating around the bushes. Devlin stated it with a sigh. What is it you wish for us to know that seems so difficult for you to voice out? The healer turned to look at the maids present in the room. They had been the ones to assist him. Judging from the way that they kept their heads down and were fiddling nervously, it was clear they knew what this was about. The healer cleared his throat. Amongst the bleeding taken care of, the maids present had been in charge of treating the ones in her legs, and they dictated something unusual. He gulped. I believe the princess may have been assaulted. He paused to glance at us. Sexually. I couldn't stop the gasp that left my lips. His words kept repeating in my head over and over again. My breathing stopped. Devlin, on the other hand, seemed frozen, like he couldn't move. His eyes looked blank. We can't be certain yet, it could be anything that could have caused her bleeding. I suggest we get a female healer to check and see. That is the only way we can know if the princess was truly assaulted. Everybody out, Devlin says, his voice low but terrifying as it echoes off the walls and is followed by complete silence.
I said, get out!
He yells out this time, his eyes blazing with anger, which remained on the healer. Everyone in the room began to cower out, their footsteps echoing through the floor of the palace as they sought out their escape, scared that staying here for even a second might bring about their king's anger toward them. Not you. Devlin says it again, his word directed at the healer, halting his footstep. The man gulped, returning to stand in front of Devlin and me. No words were spoken for a while, until Devlin was certain that every maid present had been out of the room and away from ears. You will never speak of this again, he says, his face void of any emotions as he stares at the man in front of him. Yo, Your Majesty. Whatever you suspect must stay between us, not a soul outside the palace or within the palace must know of this. Is that understood? Yes. Yes, Your Majesty. The healer answered, his head bent down in a bow. If truly the princess has been assaulted in the way you claim she has, is there an herb to prevent her from being with a child? Devlin. I called out, shocked at his words. The healer's eyes darted from Devlin to me, then back to his king. Yes, there is, Your Majesty. Have it prepared and brought here. He orders, his voice cold. Yes, Your Majesty. The healer bows, making his way out of the room, just to be stopped by Devlin's voice once again. Don't forget, this is a secret between you and me. His tone was threatening, letting the man know that he wouldn't hesitate to have his head if ever he went against his command. Of course, Your Majesty. The man gulps, racing out of the room. I stared at Devlin, stunned, not sure what to think of this. He must have felt my gaze on him but didn't say a word. Instead, his gaze moved to Kaytrona before making his way out of the room. I turned to look at Kaytrona, who was still unconscious, before letting out a sigh and making my way out of the room, going after Devlin only to find him speaking to his personal guard present. He seemed to be giving him an order, but I wasn't able to hear what he said. His personal guard bows, making his way out of the hallway to carry out his order. Devlin turned to look at me, taking in the concerned look on my face, before letting out a sigh as he walked back to where I stood. He takes a hold of my hand, neither of us saying a word as he led us to his chancery.